Hi, this is Dr. Gregory Sadler. I'm a professor of philosophy and the president and founder of an educational consulting company called Reason.io, where we put philosophy into practice. I've studied and taught philosophy for over 20 years, and I find that many people run into difficulties reading classic philosophical texts. Sometimes it's the way things are said or how the text is structured. But the concepts themselves are not always that complicated, and that's where I come in. To help students and lifelong learners, I've been producing longer lecture videos and posting them to YouTube. Many viewers say they find them useful. What you're currently watching is part of a new series of shorter videos, each of them focused on one core concept from an important philosophical text. I hope you find it useful as well. In Book 2 of his On the Nature of the Gods, Cicero is going to have Balbus the Stoic continue his discussion of what we could call Stoic cosmology. And some of the positions he's going to put forward are not uniquely Stoic. He's already given us reasons for why we should believe that the earth itself, the world, is God, and that the stars, which include the planets and the sun and moon, are also gods. And then he's going to go into kind of a long, it might seem like digression, but I think you could see this as sort of reinforcing the points that he's already made, because he wants to say that what the heavenly bodies are going to show us is this type of order that betokens rationality that the Stoics believe we can find within the universe, and particularly within the heavenly bodies. And he's going to begin with taking some pot shots at the Epicureans, specifically one of his interlocutors, Velleius, but also the Epicureans in general, talking about what the most perfect or most beautiful figures, geometric figures, actually are. And he's going to say that in the meantime, pray, Velleius, do not parade your schools utter ignorance of science. You say that you think a cone, a cylinder, and a pyramid are more beautiful than a sphere. Even in matters of taste, you Epicureans have a criterion of your own. And he says, even if we assume those figures are more beautiful to the eye, which for my part, I don't think them so, what could be more beautiful than the figure that encloses and encircles in itself all other figures, and that has no roughness or point of collision on its surface, no indentation or concavity, no protuberance or depression, right? So he's saying because it's circular, a perfect curve, that it's more beautiful. And then he goes on and he says, really, we've got two forms that excel all others, praestante sint in Latin. And what are they? One is the sphere or the globe, the spherus, right? And the other is the round or the circle, the kuklos in Greek. These are the most beautiful figures. They alone possess, as he says, the property of absolute uniformity at every point. So they're unlike the other kinds of figures. They also have every point on the circumference equidistant from the center. Nothing could be better than that. So where is this going? Well, as it so happens, the world itself is a sphere, right? And he makes fun of the Epicureans for doubting whether that's the case, and for suggesting that not only is there a multiplicity of worlds, but some of them could be non-spherical, right? So it's very clear that a lot of the natural science of the time is quite convinced that the world is a globe. And then we've got the heavens, and the ancients conceived of the heavens as something like a great sphere as well, and that's where the stars were situated. And this great globe rotates around. So he's going to talk about the rotation of the spherical firmament in which the fixed stars are going to be set, and then the circular revolutions of the stars, and by that he means not just what we call stars, but also the planets, the sun, the moon, all of those sorts of things. So two kinds of circular movement going on. And he says, let's begin with the sun. So the sun is the chief, or it takes primacy among, tenet principicatum, of the heavenly bodies. And he says its motion is such, it first fills the countries of earth with light, then leaves them in darkness, now on one side and the other. Night is caused by the shadow of the earth, which intercepts the light of the sun. So its daily and nightly paths have regularity. So we get day and night, and then we also get the sun getting closer, further away. I mean, we know now this is due to the tilting of the earth primarily. But he says that because the sun approaches and recedes, we get a variation of temperature. And so in the circuit of a year, we get the seasons, summer and winter and fall and spring in between them. What about the moon? Well, the moon is also regular. It waxes and wanes. Notice what Balbus is going to tell us. The moon wanes to its minimum when it gets nearest to the sun, waxes to its maximum when it recedes further from him. And not only is her shape and outline altered by the waxing and waning, but also her position in the sky, sometimes in the north, sometimes in the south. And the moon's course is going to affect plants and animals, as well as, as we know, tides and stuff like that. So again, regularity in these heavenly bodies. Then he's going to talk about what we call planets, which he talks about the 5 stars, right? The quinque stellarum. And he says that these are falsely called wandering, errantes stars. Why would they call them wandering stars? Well, because you don't observe them with the same exact regularity as the fixed stars. You see them kind of going in different places, but all of that has an order as well. So he says, a thing cannot be said to wander if it preserves for all eternity fixed and regular motions, forward, backward, and in other directions. And this regularity is all the more marvelous in the case of the stars, because at one time they're hidden, at another they are uncovered again. They approach, retire, proceed, follow, move slower, move faster, now don't move at all, but remain for a time stationary. And he's saying all of this has regularity to it. And then he talks about the great year, when all of these are brought back to their starting points. And then he's going to set out a little discussion of each of these planets. And interestingly, he's got them arranged in a slightly different order than we would think of. He begins by talking about Saturn, which is the furthest away, and then Jupiter, Mars, and then Mercury. Mercury, we know, is closest to the sun, which is our frame of reference, right? Venus is going to be the one that he says is actually closest to us. And depending on how orbits are going, arguably so some of the time. It's certainly closer to us than Mercury is. And he's going to give you little characterizations of each of these and how long its orbit takes. Saturn takes 30 years, much longer. Jupiter does it in 12 years, right? And then we have the star of Mars, covers the same orbit as the 2 planets above it in 24 months, all but I think 6 days. Then Mercury, circuit of the zodiac in a period of a year. And then we have Venus, right? Which he notes has 2 different names to it, and it completes its orbit as well. So what is this all supposed to mean for us? So he's going to tell us this regularity in the stars, this exact punctuality through all eternity, notwithstanding the great variety of the courses, is to me incomprehensible without rational intelligence and purpose. So, sine mente ratione concilio, some sort of plan. That's a reinforcement of what he's already said. But then he's going to add something new to this. He's going to say that the fixed stars also are going to indicate the same intelligence and wisdom. Their revolutions occur with the exact regularity. How do we know this? Well, we look at the sky and we see the constellations, which are composed of stars, moving throughout the night sky, every time doing the same thing. He also says they're not in the ether, they're actually above that in the sphere of their own, and this allows them to revolve by their own force. So they carry this out with divine power and intelligence. So this is going to lead him to the conclusion for this part. In the heavens, there's nothing of chance, fortuna, hazard, temeritas, sort of like rushing things, error or wandering, erratio, frustration, vanitas. Instead, what we have is absolute order, ordo, truth translated here as something a little bit different, accuracy, but it's actually veritas, so better translated as truth. Calculation, ratio, we may as well just say ratio. Proportion would be a better way to translate that. And then constancy, constantia, right? It's just a Latinate version of that. So we've got this contrast being made. There's nothing that's random, nothing that doesn't have a place. It's all the way it ought to be. And then he goes on and he says, well, anything that we can observe that doesn't have these four things, order, truth, proportion, and constancy, belongs to the region below the moon. Again, not a uniquely Stoic idea. The Platonists, the Aristotelians, others buy into this, that the heavens are perfectly regular. Everything below the orbit of the moon, which is closest to Earth, could be random, could be screwed up, could be wandering around, or the stuff on the surface of the Earth is also like that. And you might say, well, wait a second, didn't he show that the world itself is God and is supposed to be rational and perfect? Well, yes, the world itself as a totality, but here he's just talking about the surface of the Earth that we screwed up human beings live on. And so he's going to say, anybody who thinks that this marvelous order and regularity of the heavenly bodies is not rational cannot be actually deemed a rational being. It's so evident, so clear that what is happening up in the sky is actually rational, intentional, orderly, because it wants to be so. So this is an interesting seeming digression, probably there to reinforce the point that the world is God and the stars are God, that's made by Balbus a little bit earlier.